Our news director, Kevin Haugen, is in the Daily Dodge TV studios with Waupun City Administrator, Kathy Schlieve.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon. Welcome into today's Community Comment. Again, I am your host, Kevin Haugen. It is my pleasure to welcome into our Daily Dodge TV studio this afternoon. It's my pleasure to have join on a program this afternoon the Waupun City Administrator, Kathy Schlieve, making her inaugural appearance here on Community Comment today. Kathy, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So, again, we are in to talk about an exciting open house that's taking place tomorrow for the new community center that's opening up here. I believe it's on McKinley Street there in Waupun. So a lot of good details and backstory to go into to talk about how this project came to fruition. And finally, it's here. It's up. It's ready to go. And so a lot to talk about when it comes to that project. But before we dive into a lot of the specifics with the new community center, as is a thing I like to do with every guest that we have on for the first time on Community Comment, I like to just go a little bit into background of the role of our guest and kind of what they do in that capacity. We have other administrators on for cities. We have Beaver Dam State Administrator Nathan Teal on. So we do have other people in similar roles on our program here on Community Comment, but obviously every city, every role is a little different from each other. Obviously, there's a lot of the similarities, but there's some differences here and there. But Kathy, I turn the mic over to you. Just what essentially do you do as a city administrator there in Waupun?
I think that's interesting because I do think it's unique and different for every city based on what their priorities are. And so I have been with the city, since 2016, 15, I think actually late 15. And came in a role in economic development focus. So I was the economic development director at the time. So I've always had a very, very strong focus on economic development in my role. About a year into my tenure with the city, then I took the administrator. So I have a dual role that I do play. Those two roles can somewhat be at odds at times. Yeah. It makes it a little bit challenging. But overall, what I'm trying to do is serve the residents of the city of Waupun. And I can wear a whole lot of different hats depending on what the situation is on any given day. So from economic development, aside from that, I focus a lot on building a talent pool and trying to think about how do we not only attract but retain the labor that we need to run all essential operations in the city. We work on kind of changing and shifting dynamics. So a big thing that we're working on right now has to do with fire and volunteer firefighters and how we staff ambulance response and all of that, and thinking about that into the future and what's it going to mean for us as volunteerism continues to decline and baby boomers are aging out of the workforce, and what is that going to mean? So I write grants. It's just really, really varied. Think about how do we finance things. We do have a finance director, but work a lot to support total operations of the city. I
mean, in your role, Kathy, it seems to be very important to have a close relationship and working relationship with all the department heads, the mayor, and it's something that I'm sure has spent a lot of time working on and developing over, almost 10 years now in that role in Waupun.
Correct. I always operate from the vantage point of relationships are key to anything we do because mostly this is a team sport, right? We get things done because we're working towards common goals and everybody's oaring at least in a somewhat similar direction to try and accomplish things. So collaboration and relationships are critical to the role.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the Waupun Fire Department and the volunteers. We just had the Waupun Fire Chief B.J. DeMott on last Monday. He comes in every other month here on Community Comment. So I'm sure that'll be a continuing conversation, something we've already talked about, but I'm sure will be a continuing point of conversation in future shows. Just talking about, again, the need for volunteers and staffing those agencies. Waupun's not alone when it comes to dealing with those issues. So it's certainly an ongoing topic we'll be sure discussing here on Community Comment. Here again, our guest is Waupun City Administrator Kathy Schlieve here in our program this afternoon. And just one more question before we dive into the specifics about this community center and the open house that's taking place tomorrow. is that in terms of what I've seen over the last couple of years, I mean, I've been in this role as a news reporter in the area for coming up now, again, almost 10 years. 2017 is when I started in that role. And it always seems that Waupun has done a lot of work in terms of expanding its footprint in its businesses and growing every year. Just what have you seen in your role as a city administrator over the last couple of years that has excited you and has seen, the changes that Waupun has gone through in its downtown and the areas out there over the last couple of years?
Labor of love is what I would say. I am a homegrown Waupunite. And my family owns a business there. I'm really excited about some of the changes that we've seen happening. But it's come by design, really. Like, a lot of work went into thinking about the strategy that underlies the outcomes that we're seeing now, from trying to expand our industrial park. And we see phases 1 and 2 of a major expansion project happening now. Phase 3 is underway. Slated to complete next year. And then, really kind of the resurgence in the downtown has been very much about trying to get all of the players together. So we talked about collaboration just a minute ago, and it's completely been having the right partners at the table at the right moment in time. And you see a catalyst project happen, and then that starts to spur new things. So we have a brewery opening up.
That's exciting.
Yet I'm hoping this year. I think it's December yet, and we're in December, so
there's,
we're right on top of that.
A lot of exciting things coming down the pipe there in Waupun. I'm sure we'll love to have Kathy back on in future shows to talk about a lot of those things when they are closer to opening their doors and coming to fruition there in the city of Waupun again. But today we're here to talk about a more recent exciting new development, and that is the new community center that is at 520 McKinley Street there in the city of Waupun. There's an open house tomorrow from 3 to 7 p.m. In the afternoon. A brief dedication ceremony is at 4 o'clock, and then those who attend will be able to take part in light refreshments. There's door prizes and tours for those who end up showing up and have an opportunity to check out the facility. So that is an exciting time for those to be able to finally see what all this work and all this effort that's gone into putting this project in place and getting it to where we are now today. But Kathy, I want to go way back to the beginning here and sort of set the stage for us here and talk about the genesis of this project, how it got to this point, and the players and the people involved that were able to have this project be a focal point there in Waupun and be able to see it to be built and then now be opening up.
Sure. So this project dates back to roughly 2018. We were working on updating our comprehensive plan and really looking at our demographics for the community. And like every community in Wisconsin, we are aging. And, it's the wave of baby boomers as they come through. We talked about that just a bit ago. So what does it look like to live in a community and age well in a community? And out of that comprehensive planning process, there was one of the projects really was about thinking about how do you age in place and help people live well in communities as independently as possible. So we formed the Waupun Aging Coalition, and that was a variety of stakeholders. Waupun Memorial Hospital, SSM Health was a key part of that. We worked with them to secure a grant through the UW School of Nursing and the Cargill Foundation. First we got a planning grant, then we were awarded an implementation grant. And the coalition really formed around that idea of how do we age well. And they had four different initiatives that they tried to work on. And the community center as a space to bring people together, to reduce isolation of people just staying home, but giving them activities and purpose and fitness opportunities, etc., was one of the 4 projects that we worked on. And so we formed a facility advisory committee. They did a lot of work trying to evaluate sites and talk about what's the space requirements for something like this. And so in unfortunately, we hit COVID, but that changed a little bit. But in 2021, we had a really good sense of what our needs going to look like. And a recommendation was made to the council, and they did adopt the plan that came out of that aging in place work. And this facility was an idea at the time, but we did not know how we were going to pay for this. So we ended up putting it on the shelf, like a lot of plans can end up there, right? If you don't have the funds to do something. And then as we worked through COVID and all of the changes that came as a result of that, there was a grant that was announced called the Neighborhood Investment Fund grant. It was ARPA money, and it was an opportunity, and we had in-house grant writing expertise. So collectively with the council and the planning work that had been done, we decided to submit an application, and we were successful. So we were awarded a $4.9 million grant from the Department of Administration, and that really was a catalyst to moving this project forward.
You mentioned, obviously, this work, the focus on, as you mentioned, aging in place and finding ways to help that aging population be comfortable living and staying in Waupun. That work began in 2018. Obviously, just a couple of years later, had no idea this was around the corner when COVID hit. And I'm sure, again, that stalled a lot of different projects and plans that were in development at that time. But you just mentioned that a big part of being able to get this project to completion was a grant that was funded through ARPA dollars, which is American Rescue Plan Act funds, which became available in part because of COVID, which is interesting in hindsight to look at. That something that originally came up that obviously just stagnated so many communities, impacted so many people's lives and what they were able to do during that time. But it, in another way, opened up a door for the city of Waupun to be able to pursue different ways of generating money and funds and grants to be able to pay for this project.
Right. Yep, it was absolutely just one of those moments in time where didn't see it coming, but when it presented, because we had done all the planning work, right, we knew what was needed. We were ready, and that always, as a grant writer myself, that's always the best place that you can be. And so we didn't have a design. We had to go through all of that process, but we were able to put together a fairly good representation of what we would be doing with the funds if it were awarded. Our total project was more than that. Yeah. So our total project comes in closer to $5.8 million. So we were talking about roughly $1 million gap in essence. And so we had originally had a bigger, grander design as we went through that design process, and it was a 2-story building with far more cost associated with it, but we pared that back and got it to a place where we felt like we could address the gap. And then we did start a community campaign, and we were able to raise just over $1 million to close that gap.
Yeah, we'll want to make sure we highlight those sponsors and people who helped contribute to closing that financial gap to be able to make this project happen. But I also just want to quickly go back to this process in general and highlight for our listeners and viewers just how important it is to have committees and coalitions like the one that you worked that was formed in 2018 to come together. Obviously, sometimes it's, people see that as like, well, obviously we're not having a project come in and be developed immediately when this coalition is created. But I think it speaks to how important it is, as you just mentioned, having plans in place and having documentation ready to go, which helps that grant writing process. It shows that you have projects that are ready to go and ready to move forward, that it helps that grant approval process, I'm sure, down the road when something does open up and that you're able to apply for financial support like this.
I think on multiple fronts, right? So we, none of us have enough resources to address some of the issues that are out there. And so to think that we're going to or single-handedly address a need when we don't even have, for example, Health and Human Services at the table. We don't have a department like that. We rely on county functions. We need to figure out how we partner well with them. So it helps in building those relationships and really trying to think about what are the resources. Yeah. But then more than that, most of our granting agencies that we might apply to are really concerned about what our public input process has been to get to the conclusion, and is what we're portraying and applying for really representative of what's going to meet the need of the community. And so it can be a really frustrating process for people who are going through it, and they're like, oh, we have to go to another meeting, you know. Yeah. But the purpose isn't to meet. The purpose is to really flesh out what are those needs. And, you know, that's, I think, the frustrating part is when you get through that and you're like, well, this is a really cool idea. Why are we not doing it? And sometimes it's financing. Or not sometimes. Usually I think it's financing. So, you know, that can be a little frustrating for people because they just think, oh, there we go again, coming up with these grand ideas. But this is a really good illustration of how the process can work together to get to an outcome, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned that obviously a big $4.9 million grant through the Wisconsin Department of Administration helped bring this project together, but another big component of that, you mentioned this whole project together was around $5.8 million. Mm-hmm. So there was that $1 million financial gap that needed to be closed in order to get this project completed. And that was spurred along in support by members of the community out there and sponsorships that helped close that gap. Maybe spend a few minutes, Kathy, just highlighting those sponsors and who helped get this project completed.
Absolutely. So we received a combined donation of $750,000 from the National Exchange Bank Foundation and the Barbara and Peter Stone Family Foundation collectively. So they are sponsoring the building as well as the gymnasium that's part of the building. We received $125,000 donation or sponsorship from Michael Warner of Warner Harmson Funeral and Furniture. And he's since passed, but it's really a tribute to how he thought about the community and building community, and his contribution, I think, is a statement to kind of the legacy he's leaving for the community. SSM Health and Ignatian Healthcare Foundation donated a combined kind of fitness room equipment. So there's a brand new fitness center within the facility, and all new equipment was donated by SSM as part of really thinking about living well. And certainly I happen to also sit on the Ignatian Foundation board, and one of the top two needs that they see, one of them is cardiac rehab. And so this equipment really fits well with thinking about how do we help people rehab and rehabilitate and live well again. And then also cash contribution. And then there were some other donors. Past members of the senior center had been raising funds for years. They had wanted a new facility, so they are contributing about $30,000, $10,000 from Fox Valley Savings Bank, $3,000 from the medical staff at Waupun Memorial Hospital, and then a number of individual donors. And that brought the total well over $1 million, not well over, but just over $1 million, and closes the gap. So we have a building now that's mortgage-free, and we're thankful for that.
That's awesome. It's great when you see that sort of commitment and support from just the community to be able to rally behind something like this and realize how important it is to have a facility like this in the community to support the elder population, not just elder population, but there's so many things that can be done at a community center like this. And maybe this is a good opportunity, Kathy, to kind of talk about the building. Obviously, we want people to show up tomorrow for the open house and tour it themselves to be able to see firsthand. But what can people expect when they visit the community center there in Waupun?
Yep, and one of the things I want to just note, so we shifted, we had a senior center, and now we've shifted and are calling it a community center. And that's because of some of the work of the Aging Coalition and really thinking about this idea of living well. And we found that the need for intergenerational programming helps people of all ages really achieve that goal of living well. And so we've dropped the name senior, and we are a community center. So I think when people come there, they're going to see for the first time maybe what we haven't had in the form of a true community center. It's a space it's 22,000 square feet. There's a regulation-sized gym. They have 3 pickleball courts in there. They could be playing basketball, volleyball, etc. There's a multi-purpose space where there can be large groups. There's dining spaces. There's individual meeting spaces. There's a health room. So one of the things we do on a regular basis is I think it's a nurse who comes in and does foot care for elderly, and that's, a really big deal as people age. And so we had ADRC in just last week. I was working over there, and they were doing memory screens. And so our goal is to start to build some of this more intergenerational programming, extend our hours of operation. With our 25 budget, we were able to add a couple of part-time people to expand our hours and make that facility available to more people.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
And there's, as I understand it, essentially there are tenants who occupy a certain space in there. 2 of them here, just referencing the press release, is the Waupun Area Food Pantry and local nonprofit Reach Waupun, and just how important that is to have access and spaces for those organizations to be able to set up shop and have people in the community benefit from the services that they provide.
Yep. For the first time, I think we bring some of these resources all under one roof. And so to me, it's an exciting time. So Reach works with disadvantaged youth, and it's a way that we can do more intergenerational programming. And then the food pantry, of course, serves people of all ages, but certainly our senior population is served by the food pantry. And so having them in close proximity made really good sense as we thought about nutrition and stability of that for people of all ages. So.
Again, I just want to highlight the times and dates here for the open house and tour of the new Waupun Community Center. Again, that's located at 520 McKinley Street. There in Waupun, the open house is from 3 to 7 p.m. Tomorrow, Tuesday, December 3rd. A brief dedication ceremony is at 4 o'clock, followed by light refreshments, door prizes, and tours for those in attendance for the open house tomorrow. But Kathy, we are just about out of time here on Community Comment today. I want to thank our guest here, Waupun City Administrator Kathy Schlieve, for joining us here on Community Comment today. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that will do it for today's Community Comment.